So on Twitter, a user had linked me to a Reddit post where it begged the question, what if Dio actually came back as Joseph? And it wasn't just Joseph pulling one of the best time pranks in history. And this is actually such an amazing what if considering the unfound circumstances, I'd say. Well, let's just set the scene. Dio awakes as Joseph, and there's a lot to absorb, because at what he believed to be his strongest point in life, and while trying to cheat his way out of a fight too, he still lost to Jotaro Kujo. Now he woke up in the body of Joseph Joestar. Now in character, I think that he'd probably yell out, Jotaro! Like, oh my god, what are you doing here type beat, right? But Jotaro would turn around to see his grandpa surprised, like, GG, well, what's going on? Why are you tripping? And then Dio realizes right there, like, oh my god, wait, I'm in Joseph's body. What the heck can I even do? Because this is something that hasn't happened before. There are so many questions that come up now, like, is the actual Joseph for real dead? Yeah, probably. Does his stand stick to his body? We know that the soul transfers will take your stand when it comes to part 5, but Joseph's stand is also tied in with his Hamon, so it's possible that it just remains in the body. Also, we know that Joseph doesn't look like a vampire when he's returned, you know, so even with Dio's blood being vampiric, we can assume that the combination of Hamon had actually neutralized the effects. So does that mean Dio is back in Joseph's body and alongside that is not a vampire anymore? It's very possible. I just don't know how the heck he's gonna go about it like that. So the question is, should Dio attempt to do anything besides flee, as he is vastly underpowered by being in Joseph's body? The answer is no. If he has any plans now, he has to first get over the obstacle of getting away from Jotaro. And this is crazy unfortunate for Jotaro, considering that his grandfather is in charge of most things, especially getting into contact with the Speedwagon Foundation, but I feel like that'll come up more later. But if Dio wants to survive, he has to somewhat play the part of Joseph. And I don't think, since he's not capable of that because he speaks like a British man from the 1800s, because that's what he is, it would be better to pretend that he's just like, oh, I'm just so tired, I just can't speak, good night. Because the best move would to be lose Jotaro when they go to, I guess, a hospital or something, but they won't need to because it's like the ambulance itself was Speedwagon Foundation related. But you know, let's say that, oh, okay, we need to get to a hospital, yada yada yada. Then you get there, but also Dio's body, man, he just got that from Jonathan, still hasn't been turned into dust yet, so he needs his body still. If he wants to get away only using Joseph's body and plans to improve it, maybe, but I feel like there's only so much he can do. Like, while yes, he could like de-age, he could go back to a younger Joseph that's just a vampire, it's still Dio and all that, but I also think that since he felt his pinnacle of power in that body, maybe he just wants to continue to work on that by biologically manipulating it all together. Because for being real, Jonathan's body, he was larger than Joseph has ever been. So it wouldn't be really that crazy of an idea to be like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to try to stick it out with this one and make it better. But I feel like he'd most likely have to become a vampire again for it to work out. It's just a really odd situation where we need Dio to essentially escape Jotaro without being found out, steal an ambulance, and take his body to wherever he needs to. He can't go back to the mansion, as that's probably the first place that they check, but he has to try his best to find this secluded area away from everything. And you know, honestly, like that's not that bad of a situation. You know, if I feel like Dio's dealt with, he hasn't dealt with worse, but it's, you know, you could probably get out of it. Dio most likely has access to another stone mask out there in general. In addition to that, Poochie still exists with his stand White Snake. If he really wanted to, while he has lost his face, he's not Dio in the face anymore, he's Dio mentally. Yeah, he can become a vampire again, transfer himself to Jonathan's body, while also keeping the body of Joseph alive and pumping blood, so that regeneration process works a lot better than what he's been dealing with originally. Dio can get back to his body, probably not with too much difficulty, it's just the initial startup of it all. He just has to navigate Egypt again as Joseph Joestar, but Joseph Joestar with the world. And you know, the good thing is, Holly isn't on a time clock anymore, you know, so while Jotaro would be extremely furious that Dio had taken over his grandpa's body, at least that's what he could assume, or he's just like, oh yeah, I lost my grandpa, I don't know what's going on. He can work his way back up to Dio again over time, but considering he lost Joseph, which means that he's lost a large amount of intelligence and Hermit Purple, not just Joseph, but Kakyoin's dead too, Avdol's gone, Iggy's gone. I'm not sure on how well he'd do on finding Dio again and beating him, but it's an effort. Because yeah, really, again, let's think about this. Avdol, Iggy, Kakyoin, and Joseph are all gone. It's just Jotaro and Polnareff. And while a lot of minor antagonists in part 3 are gone, like they're dead, but Dio can still build up a small army once again without that much effort, I'd say. We also don't have to worry about Pucci having to figure out that Joseph is Dio, because only Dio knows Pucci right now anyways. Now, this might be, wow, one of the wildest scenarios we had in a bit, because Dio would be working on improving his body again and most likely taking out Jotaro before continuing on with any other plan that he had going on, or specifically the Heaven Plan. Yoshikage Kira is young and in Japan. Diavolo is young and in Italy. Jotaro is most likely setting his sights on taking out Dio once again. Josuke's a kid. Giorno's even younger. And Jolene is the furthest thing from being born. I think at this point, someone has to tell Jotaro that, hey, you're not capable of going yet. Maybe Polnareff would do so, but that's usually Kakyoin's job. But these two were willing to go to the unknown. That's how you see what happens in part 5 and all that. But I think it's because they knew that that was a world without Dio. And Dio was regarded as, you know, like he was like the world's strongest stand user. That's what he was recognized originally. And everybody that's ever talked about him like, oh yeah, he's the most powerful thing I've ever seen. So they were fine to walk around the world with not too much worry, because it's like, okay, Dio's already out of the picture. We don't have to worry about too much. People are probably going to be weaker than him. Now, the thing is, now that Dio is in the world again and potentially has more operatives functioning around various areas of the world, in addition to that, he's trying to get access to the Heaven Plan, and he doesn't have to take out Jotaro first. Jotaro has to get to him, but he doesn't even have to get Jotaro involved. He just has to make sure he's being put off. And I don't know. Here's what I want to add on though. Becoming a vampire skews the mind to an extent, right? Not like legit and psychologically. It's just a level of power that makes you believe that you're untouchable. So I'm wondering if becoming a regular person once again would affect the mindset of Dio. Also, losing to both, think about it, Jonathan and Jotaro, and you're in the body of Joseph. I feel like that would have to affect him in some sort of way, like, damn, all I do is lose. And I'm so intertwined with these Joestars, I just can't get away from them. I would hope that something about him would pewter out, like maybe the anger and the hatred and all that, but maybe, and then maybe he chooses to live out his days trying to be normal, but this is also Dio. Like, he has a blood oath against these Joestars, so he's probably going to double down on it realistically. So, new body, new Dio, new him, you know, what's the move? He could start the Heaven Plan now, and we know where that goes. But what if he was to use Joseph's Hermit Purple to capitalize on finding new threats in the world that he can recruit? With how he plans to modify his body, it's very possible that he can improve the state of Hermit Purple without adding any additional Hamon and instead just fortifying his body and soul. But I don't think he has any leverage on anyone notable though. You can't convince Yoshikage Kira to work with you, or especially work under you when he doesn't want to be discovered anyways. He'd probably try his best to find a way to take you out anyway. Like that's, you can't hire Kira. Diavolo, don't even think about it. He wants to be a boss, so being under Dio, nah, it's not happening. The best case scenario is that Dio tries to recruit a bunch of other heavy hitters, and even then, plot-wise, they're only going to keep out Jotaro for so long. It doesn't help that this is a Jotaro that's not taking much of a break. Like, he's not part 4 Jotaro. He's not taking his time out to get his degree and just chilling out and not using his stand for a long period of time. He's probably throwing himself back into the fight as soon as possible because you see how he gets about his granddad. Jotaro is going to try his best to track down Dio to the ends of the earth and try his best to just like take him out finally. He just has to worry about Pucci and everyone else that Dio is going to potentially hire. Now, I don't think Dio will ever be back to the strength that he was capable of before. I think a lot happens when you've recognized your own body and all that, but he's a lot different now. Like, he's just entirely, like, there's no part of him that's him besides his mind. And I don't know if he's ever going to get back to the Dio that we knew before. Pucci can be an enormous help for him, for sure, but would Dio bring his contingency plan with him? I know that we've talked about this before, but in this specific scenario, Dio has lost already, and he's been brought back, and now he has to think about it. He's like, okay, think about you. I have to consider that if I go again, and you go with me, and you're out too, then there's no more plans of Dio. His Pucci is his contingency plan, and if he goes, there's nothing else. The only exception, I think, would be if they have a really large grand scheme plan that's as planned out as what Pucci did in Stone Ocean. And even then, the Joestar side beats the odds continuously. Like, what would be cool though, you know, is the idea that Jotaro is going through recruiting stand users that have been affected by Dio's new reign. He'd be able to connect to these people as he's lost almost everything against Dio, except for, like, you know, money. Like, he's actually fine. He's very well off. As for he could do it, like, beat him, I'm not sure. The reason being that while Jotaro locks it down with extremely trustworthy people with their own quirk that significantly adds to the team, and they're a really strong person, and he has a bunch of people like that, Dio can just round up an extremely large amount of stand users like it's nothing, and he does really well with that. But yeah, if Jotaro wins, then the rest of the series continues well enough, you know, until we get to areas where having Joseph would have been nice and largely needed, if anything, like part 4. But there's compromise to be found. If Dio wins in the end of it all, then we just pretty much get the plot of Eyes of Heaven. I'm gonna say this though, I do not think Dio is going to escape Jotaro. I think he would do a terrible job at being Joseph, gets immediately found out, and gets beat up again. I just don't think he's not, he'd be terrible at it. Because imagine Jotaro's just like, yo, grandpa, you okay? And then Dio is trying to act like Joseph. Like, what does that look like? He's going to be like, ooh, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
And then Jotaro's like, okay. I know that my granddad said that before, but I don't think that you're him. And he's gonna be like, you got me. And then he puts the beat down on him. Like, that's most likely what's happening. But the course of JoJo is fairly changed because of it, because Joseph is an integral part, regardless of how old he gets. He is a large piece of the puzzle. But yeah, no, if y'all want to see a part 2 where we go about like the part 4 area of it and like how we're supposed to navigate this, then I'd be down. I feel like that probably won't take too much of a like, it's not gonna be such a huge time span or whatever. It's just some casual stuff. That'd be fine. We can talk it out. Maybe a stream, I don't know. But thank you all for watching. Very funny idea. If you have more like these, please keep them coming. I would really love to see it. Hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, peace out and Godspeed.
Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum. Assalamu